Hey there, guys. This is Narubin coming at you in the flesh. I got to remember to look at the camera and not at myself in the box. I'm keeping it real with you. This is basically what I look like when I'm not going to work, saving money, not using product in my hair for the last 2 weeks. But yeah, so I figured whatever, we'll just let this roll. I'm not going to get all jazzed up just to give you some notes. So thought I would just talk through the notes and put my face out there, say, hey, hope everybody's doing all right. Reach out if you have questions, concerns, you think I'm missing something, I'm not seeing something that you're doing. That kind of seems to be the biggest part of what's going on. Kids are saying, like, I submitted this or did it go through? And then we just got to check and make sure. All right, so moving on to climate change. God, there's so much just going on in the world. It's a droopy, dreary kind of like stage of Earth right now, it seems. But something to bring some, I don't know, resolve or a little bit of like calm is that climate change is not necessarily a new thing. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So climate change is just when the average weather temperatures change over a period of time. And normally we're talking about over a few decades, so groups of 10 years. So typically we're talking about 30 years. Why climate change is like becoming such a thing again is because they're talking about how now climate change is going and increasing at such a faster rate compared to how it used to like way back in Earth's early years. But in the time that Earth's been around, we've had a lot of different cycles that have occurred where the planet has been warmer and then cooled and warmer and then cooled. But over the last 100,000 years, it says humans have been living in a warming and like glacial thawing climate to where we're seeing the glaciers start to melt. And of course, now we see pictures of all the polar bears who are like floating around on little bits of ice. I probably even have one of those pictures in here, I think. So it tugs at our heartstrings and we see so much more of what's going on because of technology. It's hard for us to kind of look at that. But if we look, let's first look at this graph. And this is talking over the past 900,000 years. So that's talking over almost like a million years ago. So if you guys look, average surface temperature, we see almost 900, almost a million years ago. We were looking at about 57 degrees Fahrenheit for the average surface temperature, talking about pole to pole in the equator and average. All right, we saw 300,000 years ago that it's actually was at about, 61 degrees Fahrenheit, right? Whereas now the present, it's really somewhat still average lower, 59 degrees. So, I mean, as an average, we're not at the highest it's been, but we are higher than it has been if you compare it to other years. And what we're finding is that now with this climate change and the increase in temperature, I'd have to go back and kind of look. They didn't really keep records of like major storms and flooding and fires and stuff like that. But what we're seeing is now that with this increase in average temperature, we're seeing all those natural disasters kind of like run vampant and becoming a lot more intense. But it has happened. If we look from 1880 to 2020, which is not recorded here, so this is probably like 2018 or so, 2016, 2018. You can see in the past 130 years, right, and this is 100,000 years just for comparison, all right, we see that we are in a warming period, right? So we have our cycles, and in the last 130 years, we're seeing, and this is Celsius, we're seeing that the temperature is going up. Here's a little YouTube link that you can check out that talks about like the natural cycles versus human activity. And yes, we're seeing that the Earth has experienced warming and cooling cycles. And now because of human activity with like the additional release of carbon dioxide, which is what caused all the warming in previous warming cycles too, we're seeing that it's just happening at such a faster rate because now we're accessing all these forms of carbon dioxide and different chemicals and things like that that we're putting into the air that weren't naturally released in the past. but that comes with technology, industrial revolution, war, travel, things like that. Over the last 200 years, we saw atmospheric temperatures have risen within urban growth, right? More cities, more people moving to cities, people own multiple homes. All that building and all the material and all that, it all has a carbon footprint, right? People are moving, urbanization, right? Moving into areas that bring up the population density, and things like that. Just even Pinellas County, you might see around Pinellas County signs that say Pinellas County's full. Just kind of saying that there's enough people here. And what we're seeing is a lot of golf courses and different green spaces are being converted to these new build neighborhoods, which I'm sure I've probably gone on a rant on about to you all already, that I'm against it. And then it says the rate of climate change has been accelerating since 1978. If you think about what it was like in the 70s, family dynamics have changed, right? In the 70s, in the 80s even, thinking about like when I was growing up, my mom stayed at home. My dad was the one that worked. So yeah, we had 2 cars. But like how much my mom used it wasn't crazy. And that was towards more like 1990. In the 70s, I don't think that there were many like dual working, dual car owning families and things like that. Not everyone in the family had a personal device in their hand. There was one TV that was, I don't know if they were black and white. I don't really remember. But, so times have changed as far as like accessibility to different things and who needs and wants this and that. And so that's made a change. That's increased our climate change. And what's hard is that all the climate change in the past, it would take thousands of years to see the changes that we're now seeing in just, 20, 30 years. So that's why it's concerning. What we're actually seeing, right, things that you've heard, the global temperature of the surface is starting to rise. 9 of the 10 warmest years have taken place since 2000. So in the last 20 years, 10 of those were the warmest years that had been on record. And when you sit at home and watch the news in the morning, that's what you're seeing. You're seeing above average, above average, above average. So everything is a little bit warmer right now. We're seeing that the glaciers in the Arctic Sea are shrinking. Permafrost is melting. This is all contributing to rising of sea levels, which actually is a big concern for us because we live in a coastal area. And I'll show you some pictures about that in a little bit. We see more atmospheric greenhouse gases that are being released. And then we see some species that are leaving areas and going towards the poles because it's too hot or unbearable and things like that around where they're at. So the greenhouse effect is normal. It's what actually helps keep the planet warm enough for us to live on it. But as we start pumping all these extra gases, greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, it is keeping us a lot warmer than we actually need to be and increases the global warming. It mentions your carbon footprint. So how much carbon dioxide do you generate over a certain period of time? Yourself, your household, businesses, things like that. And I'll link an activity that I'd like you guys to do to try and calculate your carbon footprint later in the week. So this is where it gets a little sad. So rapid increases in atmospheric temperatures have long-lasting effects. Here we can see some snow, ice, and permafrost melting here. I didn't include any polar bears because it's just sad. Here you can see just kind of some different visuals. Let me see if I can move myself. All right. And you guys can see it mentions stronger hurricanes and cyclones. There's a decrease in snow coverage, rising sea levels, and things like that. All right, more extreme weather, flooding, heat waves, drought, prolonged periods of dry weather, and biodiversity loss. This is when we're talking about multiple different types of species and a lot of variety potentially dying from having to relocate, losing resources, and not surviving. All righty. Oops. To this. So this is why we care about sea level rise specifically. And it always made me wonder, like I had been in the downtown Sarasota area, probably 2 years ago, and they were having all this new construction that was being built down there. And the water was right there. And I was kind of like, why on earth are they still allowing? And you still even see it if you're in the beach areas now, all these new condos that are going up. I'm like, why are they building them if we're supposedly experiencing sea level rise? It's like they're not going to be able to park their cars under the buildings. So I don't know. Anyways, with just an increase of 3 feet in our sea level rise, like global sea level rise, this is what Florida areas could look like in the next 25, 30 years, 40 years, right? You will be alive. You might have grandkids. No. You'll have kids, right? I might have grandkids. And so this is what we're going to be experiencing. A lot of people kind of have the mindset of like, oh, well, I won't be around for it. So what does it matter? Well, your families will be around. So we'll start to see these areas underwater. And look, this is not a usable building over here. Why does this keep switching on me? All right. Coastal fisheries will deconstruct, flooding, saltwater invasion of those coastal aquifers. So up in the springs, saltwater will be pushed in the aquifers, which are found underground, which is a lot of our freshwater accessibility for the state of Florida right now. We're going to see coastal estuaries, wetlands, coral reefs destroyed. It's not going to be good. Here you can see sea level rise projection in the areas that it is affecting the entire coast of Florida. Keys, Lord only knows what those will look like when that all goes through. Parts of Alabama, Louisiana, and other states like that are going to experience it too. Oops, wrong version. So, like I said, a lot of people kind of have the mindset of like, oh, well, it's not going to bother me. So, do I really have to make change? Well, yeah, just because your area is not going to flood, some regions are going to experience, the opposite side of the spectrum. So there's going to be extreme drought and more intense heat waves, more deserts forming because there's not like an even distribution of water. Or they'll experience potential flooding, precipitation, stronger hurricanes, typhoons. I mean, if you guys keep in touch with the news at all, you'll see I'm talking about how hurricanes are getting stronger. They were releasing data the other day, and I was just kind of like, man, 2020, not many people like you yet. And they were talking about how that there are going to be quite a few large storms that come through this year in hurricane season. So, that's just depressing. It's not that far away. So talking about biodiversity loss, up to 85% of the Amazon rainforests could be lost and experience drought and lack of water and be turned to a tropical savanna. About 25 to 50% of the species could face extinction, like the polar bears and other animals that live in the poles, but then also our coral reefs are experiencing a lot of issues, which was mentioned with air pollution and like ocean acidification and everything like that and how that's all affected. But warm water kind of ramps it up. Also, it ties into the whole hurricane thing. They talked about how much coral reef damage there was when Hurricane Irma came through outside of the Keys. So insects and fungal populations could explode, which can increase the spread of disease and different things like that. Let's see, heat-related health risks, right? So some things like bad diseases thrive off warm temperatures, and they could increase. Also just like heat stroke and dehydration and things like that. Again, insects that could take over and smaller organisms could increase, and that could help us. The cost of drought and flooding. If you're experiencing drought in a farming region, you have to still water your crops. So the increased economic cost of getting water to your area, to your farm, to be able to continue to provide is a big issue. And that can just lead into food and water scarcity, poverty, social unrest. Hello, everything everyone's going through right now, the panic, the buying, the worry, that's social unrest. Migration of different refugees, whether it's people, whether it's animals, everybody moving around and then kind of taking over the resources in that new area. And then political instability, right? A lot of hostility. People believe different things, different policies. So it's a lot. If you would think that like your daily choices in biology could affect so much, that's important. All right. And this is a really bad image. It looked a lot clearer. on my screen before I publish it. Basically, it just lists a lot of things like massive loss of coral reefs, melting of global summer ice, collapse of part of the Gulf Stream. And basically, it's just saying once we get to a certain point of climate change, then everything's just going to be downhill from there on. So it is an important message to, try and make change where you can and be conscientious. Some things that we can do to reduce our greenhouse gases: walk more, ride your bike more, try not to use gas as much as possible, try and find alternative methods when able to use energy and things like that. Stop cutting down trees. A lot of people are working towards a more sustainable agriculture and forestry setup. So like a lot of like urban gardens that use hydroponics and very energy efficient setups and things like that. So, and here are just some individual things that you could also do to help. Okay. And then lastly, part 3, ozone depletion. This is what, helps to tie into the whole global warming thing. So when we use certain chemicals, like things in hairspray, right? What a great way to be sustainable. Don't use hairspray these days. They contain different chemicals that like are released into the atmosphere and then eat away at the ozone layer. Down here, there's different, or like just recently when we had to redo air conditioning in our house, it changed from Freon to another coolant because they noticed that it was ineffective and it had a really big environmental pull using that chemical in air conditioning systems. So they made a change from Freon to what I forget it is now. But that was something that was affecting ozone layer. So anyways, once the ozone thins, all the damaging rays from the sun, UVA and UVB rays, can get in more easily to the earth, and they cause other issues like cataract, skin cancer, and they can kill small photosynthetic organisms that live in the ocean. All right, and I think kind of the best way to explain what's going on is just, here's the ozone layer, okay, up in the stratosphere. You can see here's Earth, here's the troposphere, and then here's the stratosphere, different layers of the Earth's atmosphere. As it starts to break down, you see UVA and UVB rays getting in. These are different examples of things that deplete the ozone. And what we see happen is we see changes in temperature, we see pHs change, we see the amount of oxygen change. You can see that these poor little froggies are dying from pathogens because they thrive on warmer temperatures, and things like that. So you can kind of see how it all ties together here. And that's all I've got for you. Hopefully you enjoyed hearing my voice. My dog farted in the middle of the lecture, so I was making some weird faces. That's what it was. I was trying not to get gassed out. This one, I'll show you. He's old. I think his intestines aren't working so right now. But anyways, yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope you guys are staying safe, and let me know if I can do anything to help you. All right, bye.